welcome to Addicted to Murder. This is Courtney, licensed professional counselor with over a decade of experience.
And this is Trisha, and this is our fun, I don't know if you want to call it a fun fact, but our fact for the day on this podcast.
Okay.
As horrible as filicide is, which is...
Ooh.
You don't know that? Oh my gosh.
I do. I can't remember if it's like sibling or father.
When a parent murders their child who is between the age of 1 and 18.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
As horrible as filicide is, it seems to have taken humanity a long time to deal with it. In ancient Greece and Rome, there were no laws to stop a father from killing his offspring. It was not until the 16th century that some European countries began to recognize filicide as a capital offense.
Oh.
So I guess they were considered his property.
I mean, it's just like they're women back then, I suppose.
And it does say father.
Okay.
Not mother.
Right.
So
right.
that was probably a different thing. But anyways, there's our not so fun fact for the day.
Yeah, not very fun, but interesting.
I'm glad that it is a bad thing or a crime to do now.
Yes, please do not kill your children.
Harm them in any ways. Yes. No. Okay, well, we're back with part 3, final part of Ed Gein.
Yes.
Before we get going, Courtney, I have a super simple question for you.
All right, I'm ready.
Bath or shower?
Shower.
I'm a bath. Do you have a bathtub? You must.
I have a bathtub, but it's like not nice.
I mean, mine's small, but I still cram myself in there.
Yeah, mine has like, it like is a jetted tub, but the jets don't work and they're kind of old and like full of gross stuff.
Okay, so like blow out goo.
Yeah, we tried cleaning them out multiple times and stuff just keeps coming out of them.
If you had like a good bathtub, would it still be a shower you'd prefer?
I think for like an everyday situation it would be, but for like the relaxation purposes, like a good bath now and then is nice.
Yeah, I just go bath. I love baths. I wanted a hot tub, but knowing myself, I don't know that I would keep it clean.
Oh, there's so much work.
Yeah, and I just know how I would put things off. I don't know if that's an ADD thing, and Chris wouldn't be any help with that either. So that's why we've not done it. Like we've looked at those soft tubs, that aren't very expensive, just to try it out. But just go in my tiny little bathtub.
Nice.
But that was my question. Super simple.
All right, I like it.
Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. Do you want to recap us?
Yeah. So let me get my thing to the top of the page. There we go. In our previous 2 episodes, we learned about little Eddie's unique upbringing with an ultra-religious and sex-shaming mother, his reputation as an odd child and then an odd adult, and his idolization of his mother. After the deaths of Ed's family members, he was all alone and fell into a state of psychosis that included an obsession with the medical experience carried out by the Nazis. He had a fascination with 2 middle-aged women who reminded him of his mother, and who both happened to disappear following interactions with him. Upon investigation of one of those disappearances, police arrived to search his house and found a house of horrors.
And again, we are using the book Deviant by Harold Schechter. It has a lot of detail. We're not going to go into as much detail, trigger warning, about this episode. There's a lot of heinous things that are found in this house. But if you are interested in more detail in the stuff that was found, the investigation, and the eventual trial, then you should check out that book because it's got a lot of detail and it's very easy to read. Okay. So we ended last time with the grisly discoveries of multiple bodies and body parts in Ed Gein's house. One of them was Mary Hogan, the first, the barmaid that went missing. And then they also found inside a steaming burlap sack the head of Mrs. Warden, whose son was the one who assumed that Ed Gein was responsible for his mother's disappearance and which started this whole investigation.
Right.
So suffice to say, Ed was arrested that Saturday and transported to the jail in the county. Ed was not talking. And when Sheriff Schley, being somewhat shell-shocked by all he had just witnessed at the House of Horrors, came to the jail, he grabbed Gein by his shoulders and slammed him against the wall in his frustration to, get him to talk. But the manhandling did not have the desired effect of loosening Ed's lips. In fact, it did the opposite. He shrank into himself even further, not giving up any information. Courtney, I assume that a man with Ed's mental disposition would not respond well to being roughed up.
No, Ed was very passive in nature, and the actions of police would likely have maybe triggered memories of even being abused by his mother, and that would just cause him to withdraw even more.
Yeah. So Ed was questioned after that for 12 hours. He was not represented by an attorney, and he was not told he could have a lawyer present. It didn't really matter, though, because he said nothing. The autopsy of Mrs. Warden's body started soon after. Per the book, this is the transcript from the general info tab of the autopsy. It's just something that's kind of interesting, on how they documented things back then.
This would be a good place for a trigger warning. This gets a little bit graphic,
Yep.
so you might want to skip ahead.
Yeah. So, quote, the body of a murdered and mutilated woman, Mrs. Bernice Warden, had been found in the woodshed of the Old Gein farmhouse near Plainfield, Wisconsin. So then it goes on to describe the evidence found at the farm store and then picks up with, quote, the body had been found hanging by the heels from the roof bars, decapitated and eviscerated. Head and viscera had been found in the same location. The vulva in a box, the heart in a plastic bag. The autopsy describes the state of the body in more detail here. Quote, it had been decapitated at shoulder level by a smooth circular cut which severed skin, all the soft structures, and the intervertebral cartilage between the 6th and 7th cervical vertebrae had been cut with a sharp instrument. The body had been opened by a median incision from the manubrium sterni and extending in the midline to the area just above the mons veneris. I'm not sure what that is. Here, the cut circled around the external genitalia for complete removal of the vulva, lower vagina, and the anus with the lower portion of the rectum. To accomplish this, the symphysis pubis had been split and the pubi bones widely separated. And again, if you want more, read the book. So ultimately, the autopsy determined that it was the bullet shot wound fired at the back of the head that was the cause of death. So, which means everything else that this body suffered was post-mortem. So any thoughts, Courtney?
I think it is important to note that the method of death in these cases was quick and presumably painless for the victims. A single shot to the back of the head is merciful compared to the sadistic torture that many serial killers impose on their victims. And so this suggests that Ed was likely not sexually aroused by the act of killing itself, but was more interested in that post-mortem dismemberment.
So Monday morning brought a break in the case. Eddie actually admitted to killing Mrs. Warden. However, he claimed not to be able to recall any of the details. When asked if he remembered shooting her, he said, quote, note, this is what got me. Whether I took my antifreeze out, that is what I can't remember. It's hard for me to say from now on. My memory is a little vague, but I do remember dragging her across the floor. I remember loading her body into the truck. The investigator also asked Gein if he was a cannibal, and he said he didn't remember. The investigator asked Ed if he had killed anyone else, and he responded, quote, not to my knowledge. When asked where all the body parts came from that were found at the house, he said that he retrieved them from graveyards and cemeteries. Courtney, do you believe that he can't remember killing Mrs. Warden, or that he doesn't recollect if he killed anybody else?
So when psychosis is present, a major symptom of that is disorganized thinking. I believe that Ed's thoughts were likely so disorganized and jumbled that he would have had great difficulty kind of recognizing what was real and what was just a fantasy. So knowing had he actually killed them or had he just sort of fantasized about it. And then trying to express his thoughts, especially like verbally, in any sort of meaningful and organized way would also be difficult in this case.
Well, Ed went on to explain that for 5 years, so since 1947, he had gone many times at night to graveyards or cemeteries, perhaps as many as 40 times. He claimed that most of the time he didn't end up doing anything. He just turned around and headed home. However, on at least 9 of his outings, he did dig up the graves of recently deceased middle-aged women. He would open up the caskets, take what he wanted, and then put the rest back. He said, quote, in apple pie order. He claimed to be in a daze when he would rob these graves. More than rob these graves, desecrate the bodies in the graves. Ed would further claim that he felt the compulsion to rob a grave. When he would fill one, he would pray not to feel that way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. He also told investigators that he did so partially because he was interested in the science. He said when he was young, he wanted to be a doctor. So at this point in the interrogation, he did deny cannibalism. So, Courtney, we talked about motivations last time for grave robbers, and if Eddie is being truthful, it does look more like a morbid curiosity than either theft of items or necrophilia.
I agree. Yeah.
So we can take that off the table.
Yes.
Other investigators, those affiliated with the crime lab, also questioned Ed on the various body parts they found. They were still trying to figure out the motive to why he did what he did to the bodies. Here's an excerpt that may shed some light. Okay, question to Ed. Okay, why don't you be the answer? Why don't you be Ed?
Okay.
Question to you, Ed. Do you have any recollection, Eddie, of taking any of these female parts, the vagina specifically, and holding it over your penis to cover the penis?
I believe that's true.
Okay, well, Ed, you recall doing that with the vaginas of the bodies of the other women?
That I believe I do remember. That's right.
Would you ever put on a pair of women's panties over your body and then put some of the vaginas over your penis?
That could be.
Okay, so Ed also admitted that he would use the masks he made for himself. He would wear them. He also would wear the, quote, mammary vest. He would put on the skin stockings while also using the preserved vulva. He would walk around his house in this skin suit, or if it was warm enough, he would go outside in the skin suit. Ed did eventually admit to killing Mary Hogan as well. A polygraph was used to eliminate him as a suspect in several other missing persons or unsolved killings in the area. So they were just like asking about anyone that was missing. Maybe Ed did it, but the polygraph eliminated him as a suspect. Just Mary Hogan.
Right.
All right. What are your thoughts on his motive now, Courtney?
So if you remember back to in our first episode about Ed, we talked about how his mother wished that Ed had been born a girl and tried to, in a way, raise him as if he was a girl in an attempt to avoid him growing up to be a lustful sinner like all elder men. So I think it's possible that this aspect of his upbringing could have resulted in confusion about his gender identity, and even made him fantasize about what being a woman would be like. Obviously, back in the 1950s, being transgendered would not have been acceptable in any form. And I don't necessarily think that Ed was transgendered, but my guess would be that there may have been a sense of, like, maybe even trying to please his mother by, quote, becoming a woman through the use of female body parts.
Mm-hmm. That's where I was going to, is trying to be the woman that is, or the daughter his mom always wanted.
Right, exactly.
So Ed, by this time, had a lawyer, and it was decided that he would enter a not guilty by reason of insanity plea, or NGRI. Courtney, what are your thoughts on this? I feel like he does meet some legal basis for insanity. It could be argued that he does not know the nature or quality of his acts, at least when it comes to the grave robbing, although the fact that he claimed to have prayed not to go through with it prior to the act does indicate that he knows it's wrong, and he does it anyways.
Yeah, this one is not so clear-cut to me as others have been, because on the one hand, you're right, he was able to recognize that his actions were wrong. But on the other hand, I don't necessarily believe that he was in control of all of his capacities enough to make a good decision.
Yeah, and, he would claim that he wouldn't really remember doing all the things.
Right.
So, if he's being truthful. Ed was arraigned on the murder charge for Bernice Worden on November 16th, 1957. Ed would eventually be sent to the Central State Hospital for sanity testing before the trial date was determined. So, it was determined that some of the graves that Eddie had admitted to entering needed to be interred. They argued about this a lot because, as I was telling you before, they didn't believe that Ed, being such a small dude, could actually go down 6 feet, open up graves and stuff, but they finally just had to do it. So they picked a few of the 9, that he admitted to.
Right.
So the first grave was opened, and inside the damaged coffin lay only a 12-inch crowbar. And what had the headstone said along with the name? Mother. So this was not his mother's grave, though. So Ed claimed he had never tried, or he had never got to Augusta's grave. I don't know if he tried, but apparently she was buried in a cement tomb.
Right.
So
I don't imagine that he would ever desecrate her body
Yeah.
based on his sort of devotion to her.
Right. The investigators would end up opening 3 graves that, when opened, corroborated Ed's story. And they decided they had enough. They don't want to open up anymore. They believed him when he said that he robbed the 9 or so graves. Yeah. So there's that. And apparently they weren't that far down below the earth. So they said it was a lot easier than they thought it would be to get into those graves. Mm-hmm. So Ed was undergoing testing at the state hospital between November 25th and December 18th. According to the physical exam, he was 5 foot tall and 140 pounds. He was in pretty good health. Courtney, is he shorter than you?
Only by a half an inch.
It's very small for a man. Yeah.
Right. So if he was wearing shoes, we'd probably be the same height.
Yeah. Ed did complain to the doctors about bad smells. When asked to describe them, he said it smelled like flesh. Courtney, do you know if this is a typical olfactory smell for a schizophrenic?
It actually is. So bad smells like decaying matter, sewage, or rotting food are one of the most common types of olfactory hallucinations. The other 2 main categories are like burning smells or like chemical and metallic smells.
I wonder why. Like,
I don't
what
know
part
either.
of the brain is that? I mean, do you ever hear of schizophrenics talking about smelling flowers or something pleasant? Or is it usually...
Occasionally, it could be like common, like smells like detergents or perfumes or things like that. But usually it's something bad.
Okay, well, Ed's IQ was determined to be around 99, so low average. The ink block testing showed Ed to be better than average in intelligence. Courtney, what can you tell us about the Rorschach? I don't know how to say that word.
Rorschach.
Okay, or ink block tests.
Yeah, so the Rorschach ink block test was developed back in the 1920s to assess a person's personality, emotional functioning, and thought disorders. Patients are shown a series of abstract but symmetrical ink blots and asked to describe what they see in the image. They are then shown the cards a second time and asked to identify the specific details or indicators in the image that led to their answer. So these answers are then analyzed for themes. So most people who are, neurotypical, don't have stuff going on, will answer in similar ways, providing normative answers to compare to. And while those who have a thought disorder will often have very strange or unique answers. So these days, there's a lot of, skepticism about its use as a diagnostic tool for most things, just due to the subjectivity of the analysis. It really is up to the interpretation of the person giving the test. But it is still used to help identify if someone might have a thought disorder like schizophrenia.
Have you ever used it?
No, I have not used it. You have to have special training to use it.
Okay. Is that something you'd be interested in, or are you on the bandwagon that it's maybe not the greatest way to test for schizophrenia?
I mean, I don't think it's the greatest way to test for schizophrenia. Working with kids don't typically develop schizophrenia. That typically shows up later in life.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that I would use in my practice in any sort of regularity or anything.
And when you did work with adults, it wasn't usually schizophrenic adults.
Correct.
Yeah. Psychologist Robert Ellsworth documented that Ed had a, quote, fair amount of information, a good vocabulary, and an ability to reason abstractly, which led to, quote, toward higher intellectual potential, near the bright normal level. So Ed's functioning was impaired due to a, quote, strong emotional disturbance, which could mean that Ed was, quote, psychotic in nature. Other tests conducted, such as the thematic apperception test and the MMPI, and others identified in Ed a, quote, feminine identification and bizarre religious beliefs, an inclination to, quote, project the blame for evil on some other person, and guilt associated with sex. So ultimately, it was documented that Ed was a, quote, very suggestible person who appears emotionally dull. Beneath that lies aggressiveness that may be expressed by inappropriate reactions that are followed by remorse and mild-manneredness. He is an immature person who withdraws and finds forming relationships with others difficult. It goes on then to say, quote, it appears that this is basically a schizophrenic personality with several neurotic manifestations. At the present time, he is confused and has difficulty in looking at his situation realistically. Okay, so that was a big mouthful, but you get the gist. Again, there's way more of this in the book. So another doctor said, quote, the subject is an introverted, odd, withdrawn personality. Okay. So at the end of his examination, he withdrew his admission to Mrs. Hogan's death. So he changed his mind. He didn't do it. He explained that he admitted to it, and this was for Mary Hogan, the first person.
Right.
So he withdrew that. He explained that he admitted to it because the investigators encouraged him to do so, and therefore he complied. He admitted to the grave robbing. Quote, there is ample reason to believe that his violation of the graves was in response to the demands of his fantasy life, which was motivated by his abnormally magnifying attachment to his mother. Throughout all of this time at the hospital, he denied engaging in any sex acts with the cadavers. He has claimed that the whole time we've been looking at it, he does not want to have sex with those. Well, he doesn't because he said they smell bad.
Right. But also if you think about, like, yes, he was using them and putting them on.
Yeah.
But it was, in my interpretation, I think more trying to experience life as a woman
Right.
as opposed to, like, having sex with the sexual
Right.
parts of a woman's body.
This is totally off topic. What is your first inclination? Do you think that Ed was ever with a woman sexually?
I think he was.
Yeah.
But I imagine he had an extreme amount of guilt about it.
Yeah. Do you think it was before or after his mother died? Or maybe more than once? This is purely speculation, but...
Yeah. I mean, I don't know for sure, and I would guess it was probably more than once.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I believe, some speculation that he and Mary Hogan had engaged in some sexual activity before her death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, while he had been, like, visiting the bar that she owned. But that may or may not be true.
I feel like in this book I skimmed over someone who claimed to have been kind of like a girlfriend of his too. But I didn't put it in here because I don't think I thought it was important. Or they were like, well, we can't tell if she's telling the truth or something like that.
Right, right.
So final review by the 6 doctors that studied him. This is what they said. Quote, it was the consensus. Oh my gosh. My words are not working as I'm talking so much on this one. It was the consensus of the staff's opinion that this man is best diagnosed as a schizophrenic reaction of the chronic undifferential type. Because his judgment is so influenced by his envelopment in a world of fantasy, he is not considered to know the difference between right and wrong. His concept of the nature of his acts is markedly influenced by the existence of the delusional material, concerned in particular with the idea that outside forces are responsible for what occurred. Because of his extreme suggestibility, he is not completely or fully capable of acting on his own behalf or in consultation with his attorney. This man, in the opinion of the staff, is legally insane and not competent to stand trial at this time. Courtney.
There are many times that or not many times that I agree with the assessment of psychiatrists from this generation. But in this case, I really do feel like they just kind of hit the nail on the head with that one.
Right. Working now where I do, I see I don't want to say a lot, but I see 10% of maybe people that are involved in a case that have to be restored to fitness. And they do it kind of depending on the severity of their crime.
Right.
They'll send them to the state hospital if it's, a violent felony or something like that. But if it's not, because the state hospital is so overcrowded, they'll do like community restoration. Well, they'll use basically kind of like an outpatient.
Right.
To try to bring them to a level of fitness. And sometimes they get there because they just need to get to the level where they can, participate in their defense.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting. So, yeah, okay. So, he's not found competent. On January 6th, Eddie had his insanity hearing. So, this is what the hospital recommended. Now he has to have a hearing. The judge has to agree with it. 2 of the expert witnesses attested to his insanity. However, the third, Dr. Edward Burns, claimed that Eddie was basically medically insane, but legally sane. Okay.
Right.
Based on the testimony and reports of the expert witnesses, the judge determined that Ed, at this time, was not fit to stand trial. He would return to the state hospital for an indeterminate amount of time to see if he could be brought to fitness. He did say, quote, from the opinions of various experts, I think it is adequate for me to say that it does not appear that he will ever be at liberty again. Perhaps that is a desirable conclusion. So I think the judge is saying, I don't know if you're ever going to bring him to competence.
Right.
And maybe that's the best thing. Keep him in there forever. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, there were not reliable treatments or, good medications to treat chronic schizophrenia back then. So institutionalization was most often the recommendation, and it was far more unpredictable.
This book didn't go into the treatment. What do you think was like electroshock? Do you think it was just tranquilizers? What do you think that they give back then?
Yeah, so they did have some kind of like early antipsychotics, but they had very, very severe side effects. So it would be essentially like sort of being like tranquilized a lot. So if they did do medication, that's kind of where they would go. May have done electroshock therapy. That was pretty kind of common in that time, but it could also have just been, being in the asylum and
chilling there.
Yep.
Being out of society.
Exactly.
Well, suffice to say, the citizens of Plainfield were pissed with the judge's decision. They wanted justice for the crimes he committed because he still murdered someone.
Right.
And, violated other corpses. Maybe murdered two people. And they wanted a trial, and they wanted to see him brought to justice. What they got was information that his house would be put up for sale, and the proceeds would go to the victims. So they were worried, and very rightfully so, that somebody would buy that house and turn it into like a monster museum.
Right.
The Ed Gein, because this made huge. I mean, this was like worldwide news. I didn't go into that, but the press were everywhere around this.
Right.
All over the place. They were at the crime scenes, fucking up the crime scenes. The stuff that press did back then.
Right, because no one had ever seen anything like this before.
Right. So they didn't want that. They didn't want their little town to be turned into like the Ed Gein freak show town. So the auction was set for March 30th. The townspeople would just have to deal with it. But somehow on March 20th, the Gein property mysteriously caught fire. The 2-story house was utterly destroyed, reduced to rubble. There was a few outbuildings buildings left, but the main house was gone. What an unfortunate accident, Courtney.
Yeah, I mean, what a strange and convenient coincidence for those town people.
So Ed did very well at the hospital for many years. Perhaps he was happier there than he had ever been in his life. The routine suited him. He was pleasant, a good patient who was polite to the staff and others who were being treated there. He was continually evaluated to determine if he was now fit to stand trial. So like every 6 months, they would evaluate him again. And 10 years after he went in, it was determined that he was now fit to aid in his own defense. The bifurcated or split trial, because he would first be tried for the murder of Bernice Worden. Then he would be tried to see if he was not guilty by reason of insanity if he was found guilty in the first.
Right.
That started November 22nd, 1968. The trial lasted a week. He pled not guilty and NGRI. Now, it was a bench trial, so no jury. And one of my professors in my psychology and law class said that was the only trial that you should ever do without a jury, because juries don't like the not guilty by reason of insanity defense. They think the person is getting away with crimes if they are found insane, and they get to go off to the state hospital instead of prison, and that's just not fair.
Right.
So a lot of times they don't vote with what the law says.
Right, or they don't even really consider it.
Right. So anyways, I think Ed did the right thing here. These people were pissed.
Yep.
I don't know that they would have found him not guilty by reason of insanity. So he just did it for the judge. And he was found guilty for the murder of Bernice Worden, but he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. So he was both convicted and then acquitted.
Right.
But he didn't go free. He went back to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Courtney?
I mean, given the options at the time and the needs that Ed would have, had to manage his psychosis, I think this really was the best outcome. I mean, he would not have survived very long in prison at all.
No. He was so small and
right.
Weird. And
notorious.
Yeah. So when you're sentenced to the state hospital, just like prison, you can get out early. Oftentimes at the state hospital, there isn't like a set sentence. It's basically you're in there until you're cured. In 1974, Eddie filed a petition stated that he was, quote, now fully recovered, his mental health, and is fully competent, and there is no reason why he should remain in any hospital. So it's kind of like the hospital's form of an appeal.
Right.
So at this point, he had spent nearly 17 years in the mental hospital. So it could be argued that for one count of murder that he was found guilty of, he may have been released from prison or, be on parole at this point, possibly. But his petition was no good. He was denied, and he was returned to the hospital to live out the rest of his life. He did die in the hospital at age 78 from respiratory failure and cancer. Courtney?
I think it's a fitting end, I suppose. Ed Gein truly was one of the only, quote, psycho killers, using that medical definition, right? And, as we know, he was the inspiration for many fictional serial killers in pop culture history after that.
Yeah. Definitely. His legend still lives on.
Right.
They just, Charlie Hunnam just played him.
Right. They just did that Netflix miniseries kind of situation. And
obviously, he still has some sort of relevance on pop culture.
Right. I think the things that they found in his house were so bizarre and unique that
it's disturbing.
Yeah, that I think like those types of things they don't leave the general public psyche very easily.
And the fact that he was not seemingly motivated by what most murderers are motivated by, sex or money or jealousy or, the typical things.
He truly was mentally ill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's all there is.
No idea what our next one is.
Not yet.
No.
I have some books. I'll give you one.
Yeah. Are they short?
Some of them.
Okay. Okay. Well, what do we do when a very small man approaches us wearing the skin of another individual over their genitalia?
You go nuts. You go home and you go to therapy.
Okay.
A lot of therapy.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Right. Bye.
Bye.